What is going on to all my yogis out there? My name is Ian, and welcome to Yogadelics, where we explore alternative takes on yoga. And today we are going to talk about the pink elephant in the room, which is why do yogis focus on asana so much? Because, of course, there are 7 other limbs of yoga, but there has been a fetishization of asana, not just in the West, but globally. And it's easy to blame the West and capitalism for this. But when we look back at the history of yoga with guys like Iyengar, Pattabhi Jois, Krishnamacharya, Deskachar, all the kind of forefathers of, that brought yoga to the West, they had a massive focus and bias toward asana. However, when we look at the other 7 limbs, if you go deep into any of them, and take it seriously, your life will radically change. Like who you are as a person. If you strictly maintain an adherence to the yamas or the niyamas or engage in a consistent pranayama, yogic meditation, or samadhi meditation practice, you will change who you are. You will delete some of the more negative aspects of yourself that are deep within the unconscious. But if you spend 10,000 hours doing asana, what are you going to gain? Of course, you will dive into subtle body awareness. You will gain some consistency with your routine and be more mindful. But there is a degree of separation that exists between how most people practice asana and how they should be practicing. And let me inform you on that. Most people treat asana practice as a workout. And they take their yogadelics and they have their yoga high and they think that they've accomplished something. But most of the time, they've just activated the sympathetic nervous system. If you stretch really hard, your body is in pain. And then if you consistently are doing passive or isometric holds for 60 to 90 minutes that are painful, you are going to be activating that system like crazy. And so if you are trying to get strong or flexible or look good with body weight exercises, any form of asana or that's a typical sequence is going to be terrible at doing that. If you want to get stronger or look better through body weight exercises, you should be doing some form of gymnastics. If you want to get really flexible really fast and do it in a much more healthy and productive way, you should be engaging in forms of mobility that also include active strength and hit different planes of movement that most yoga sequences don't. And so what is the point of yoga if there are many different things that you can do that are just way better? Why don't we just throw it out? Well, as Patanjali said, yoga or asana, is in preparation for pranayama and meditation. And so if you gave me someone who is so out of shape, morbidly obese, not flexible, I could get them to a comfortable meditation practice in about 1,000 hours. And that sounds like a lot, and it is a lot, but they may need a lot of asana to get there. But back in Patanjali's day, because everyone had to move a lot and was much more flexible, you didn't need that much asana to, prepare for meditation. If you give me a typical semi-healthy person who exercises sometimes, it may take a couple hundred hours. And if you take a young person, it will take easily less than 50 hours to prepare them for a comfortable meditation practice. But the point of asana is that when you combine asana, pranayama, and meditation into one practice, it is the greatest personal development system of all time, because the asana opens up your breath. The ujjayi breath opens up your pranayama practice. And if you do pranayama at a high level, then your meditation and your yogic visualization skills go haywire also in a good way. Because pranayama, much like pranayama and yogic meditation are scientific. And what do I mean by that? Well, if, for instance, this morning I was doing 90-minute inhales with a 30-minute breath retention, and a 90-minute exhale. I felt pretty good while doing it. But some days, if I have some bad food the night before, I get too much sleep or not enough sleep, or I don't do an asana practice before, then that won't be as easy. Then suddenly I'm pushing it or I can't do it at all. And so I can scientifically say certain things affect this practice. Same with my visualization or yogic meditation / visualization practice. And so I wholeheartedly know, and I'm any yogi that knows what they're talking about knows this, that if you do an asana practice, even if it's 45 minutes before a pranayama and meditation practice, it will go so much better. And so I have made a deliberate shift in my life to still continue an asana practice, but make it deliberately for meditation. Now, if you look at me, like me now, I'm a little bit bigger than I was in my videos 5 years ago because I am doing real mobility and real calisthenics and kettlebells and these things. And I'm way strong. I'm just as flexible as I was back then, way stronger, have way better active mobility and strength, which is going to not screw me over when I'm older, like a lot of yogis from the 60s, 70s, and 80s who are now old, who are doing the same sequences people are doing now. But I do an asana practice in the morning so that I can have a deep meditation and pranayama practice, which are the things that actually change who you are. But that isn't what we're talking about here. Hopefully I sold you on the idea that asana is important, but only for one specific purpose. So why are so many people obsessed with this? Because doing a ton of yoga doesn't make you a better person. If you get the Sanskrit tattoo on your back or on your hand or something, or the chakras, and you have the Manduka mat and the Lululemon pants, and you're so kind, yeah. And you do a little Nadi Shodhana or a little mindful meditation every once in a while after your practice, and you take a 10-minute Shavasana. That's not doing jack shit, pardon me. And I've been close to hundreds of yogis over the past 12 years of teaching yoga and the past 16 years of doing yoga. I have dated let's not say countless, dated multiple people in the yoga community, been best friends with many others. And there is no other group, that has as many. It's almost as bad as I've never been to Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous, but people come to yoga for healing. People come for a reason, to get that high, to avoid something, to feel like they are creating a new self. But as Freud talked about, Mr. Sigmund Freud, and we're going to get into some psychology here, there is the true self, but then there's the false self, and the superego and the ego inflate the false self, and it feels like it's the true self. It feels like it is making progress toward truth and reality. But when you look at the actual life of most yogis who take themselves seriously, they are hanging on by a thread and putting on an act in terms of being a good person that's productive. Because if you put them in any form of a stressful situation or in a very deep interpersonal relationship, all that shit, all that facade, it starts to crumble. I've witnessed it before. I have dated the iconic, kind, spiritual yoga woman that, is perfect, on the outside, and even as you're talking to them. But then as the relationship started to progress, this has happened more than once, as the relationship starts to progress, you start to see that once you have to deal with them on a real level, things are real, like we're moving in together or having problems or discussing where our future, suddenly they're just a normal human being with a huge ego underneath with all the same problems. And there's just a nice sheath of armor between you and that. And so when you deal with, someone like this on an acquaintance level, you can't necessarily see all of this. And that's why it gives off this feeling that these people are enlightened or making progress. But if you have intuition and you start to, just look and see how they react and how they tick, or just the average yogi, you're like, oh, wait, something's wrong here. And I'm not saying I'm perfect, you guys. I'm not. Trust me. I've got so much shit to undo that, I'm in the same boat as everybody. But at least I'm acknowledging it. And the people around me, like my wife, for instance, she knows my main problems. I was upfront with them from day one. My family, obviously, it's all good. And any of my friends, there's no front here. Look how I'm doing these presentations. Look how I'm talking. But everyone else is creating this armor. But what they are actually doing, and we're going to, so Freud had a protege, his secretary named Otto Rank. And much like all of Freud's other proteges, like Reich, Jung, Alder, and others, they broke off from him and started doing their own thing. And Otto Rank wrote a book. It's actually right down here. It's called Art and Artist, The Creative Urge and Personality Development. And he studied artists, and he started to learn that, artists and neurotics and these types of people. And he learned that most people, and this gets expanded in Ernest Becker's Pulitzer Prize winning book, The Denial of Death. Becker is an American cultural anthropologist. And he talks about how most people's whole life is creating an immortality project. For instance, an easy example is Ernest Hemingway. Hemingway the American author, had a lot of childhood trauma. His mother dressed him as a girl in the late 1800s in Michigan and called him Ernie. until he was like 8 years old. And whatever you believe about trans people now or gender stuff, I mean, that's not relevant, because in 1890, if your mom is dressing you as a girl until you were 8 years old and calling you Ernie, you're going to get bullied. You're going to have some problems later in life. The kids at school aren't going to be very nice to you. They're still not nice to you today most of the time if you are doing that, but especially back then. And then Hemingway also couldn't get into World War I, and he was traumatized by that because he had to be in the Red Cross and be like a nurse and a driver and these types of things, and he got injured. So he had all this trauma. And so that's why he was this machismo person. That's why he had this urge to write and create this persona and this artistic catalog and these types of things, because he was trying to run away from his trauma and become immortal, one could say. And the same could be said about a lot of artists, but same with the neurotic and the depressive, that they're creating these own inner fantasies in their head because they're trying to deny death. And so how are yogis trying to deny death? Well, the first easy part is they are obviously engaging in the beautification and prolonging of their body, trying to maintain a trim, fit, or the yoga body, the yoga butt, these types of things. And, doing that inherently isn't a problem. Like, sure, do whatever you want, be healthy, that's great. But as I'm sure you've noticed, there is a certain conceitedness and malignant sexualness and other things that many yogis engage in, not just on Instagram, which are the worst of them, but in real life and in other ways. Because what's also interesting about asana, this is a side tangent, is it obviously activates you sexually. I'm sure unless you are like a celibate nun or something, or engaging super hard in brahmacharya, and what I have to say to all the brahmacharyas out there and all the celibates is, why save it when you can give it away for free? Is that when you are engaged in heavy yoga, orgasms or your sexual life is going to be generally increased. But that isn't necessarily good, because malignant, untethered sexual energy needs to find a hole or a place to go. And unless you can manage that energy, it could lead to a sexual addiction or many other things. I've known guys who have learned from yoga, like to have multiple orgasms or any of these other things, and they've become sex addicts. I have a friend who's in Sex Addicts Anonymous, I think it's called, or something like that, right now because of yoga. Because he just got super deep into it all. It's crazy, but it's a real thing. Anyway, but there's also the real immortality project is not confronting the real self, not confronting reality, because most yogis in the world who do asana are actually going to the deeper layers. When you go to the deeper layers, something happens, you guys. The reason I am doing this channel and you're listening to me right now is that I have gone deep enough in my meditation practice to understand the concept that when one suffers, we all suffer. And then through logical thinking and other aspects, I realized that the fastest way to help people is through online education, free online education like this. It's scalable. I can create a video right now, and I have another channel that has over 1 million views on literature. The link is down to that channel below. And I have helped at this point thousands of people get back into reading and into writing, and I've alleviated, hopefully, suffering in their life. And my life project has become that. My life project has moved further away from the self once I've gone there, because I was like, okay, I can go deeper. But there is this calling, this bodhisattvic calling that I need to engage in. And that's my path. And some people move past that. Some people reject that idea and they go inward and they're kind of more of a hermit. But what's interesting about that is that I know a lot of people who like to front renunciation, like they're taking this yogic path, but they're still living a very Western lifestyle. They have a family and they have kids, and they want to renounce certain aspects of their consciousness or of their life. Like, I don't like any negative energy. Keep it away from me. But they don't want to go all the way. And you have to go all the way, you guys. Honestly, there are two paths in this yoga game. You can either renounce and be a real yogi and, meditate and go out into the world and do the spiritual journey and do everything you can to shed whatever you can. Or you can be a bodhisattva and teach others, go to certain levels and teach others how to get there also, so that they can become awakened and nonviolent. If you're not doing that, then I don't know what the fuck you are doing. And that's the inner fantasy thing. And it's what I call the my enlightenment movement. Everyone wants to take their yogadelics and feel good and have their own enlightenment and create their own little false reality where they can deny death, where they can feel immortal and feel powerful. And that's why asana is such a big deal. Because when we look back and let's get into some historical stuff here, how asana was brought to the West. It was brought by Indians. It was brought by Sri K. Patabi Joyce. Iyengar, Deskatar, Krishnamacharya. And what did they do? Well, I can maybe leave Krishnamacharya out of this somewhat, honestly, but they had a massive focus on asana because they understood, like Patabi Joyce working at Mysore College and developing yoga for people in the West, that Westerners have this ambitious mindset. I mean, look at us. Look what we've done over the last, 2,500 years since Alexander the Great. We have that urge. We have that tick. I mean, much like the Easterners do, like the Chinese, they weren't, and Indians, they weren't not progressing, just the West just at the end just did it faster. And so ambition is encoded, especially in the Western mindset, because it's unchecked. With Christianity, with procreate and prosper, it is a different mindset that most of the time moves unrelentlessly. And so when these guys brought this over, what did they pitch? Obviously, Iyengar wrote like light on pranayama and like talked about the other aspects. But at the end of the day, he didn't sit in front of people and meditate. He did his poses. He showed off the asana. He understood that the easiest way to yoga pill someone is to blow their brains out with a yogadelic, which is fine. It's a funnel. But I don't think they realize capitalism and how corporations were going to take it. I mean, I think they did by the end of their life because they were engaging in it. But I love how we've been so programmed that we just picked it up. Asana, as I talked about, is the preparation for meditation. And even if you don't care about that and it's just subtle body awareness, it is not like other athletic endeavors. There's a spiritual aspect. For instance, like when you've opened a certain part of your consciousness, a certain part of your body has also, like flexibility wise, has also opened. Like when you start saying yes more and start healing, like your hips open, or when you stop being so stubborn, for instance, your hamstrings can open. There is a literally mind, body, and muscle connection that exists, which is really cool. But most people miss out on that and are just stretching, and they're stretching hard, and they're doing contortionism and stretching to their daily limit through passive stretches, which is massively unhealthy. To be able to attain something, to be able to attain the image. Because once you have the image, trust me, I've been there. I guess I'm still there. But if you can do the splits and put a foot behind your head and do all these things, people think that you are somehow enlightened. That's the marker. We need images. We need proof. I could be unflexible if it sat and meditated, but if I told people, they'd be like, yeah. But the idea of proof comes back to grades and comes back to money and comes back to social status in our society, which mostly revolves around your job and how much money you've acquired or your looks, how you look. So it's no surprise that all these yoga studio or that yoga has blown up in the way that it has, but it's very embarrassing that us as a community have not done anything to put this in check. That we have sat and continued to, or not just open corporate Mick yoga studios. That's going to happen no matter what. Like, okay, that's awesome. Like some profiteers, corporate people are going to make some money. There's a system to rope people into an exercise regimen. Great. But even the mom and pop yoga studios don't take yoga seriously. And that's most of the time because the owners haven't gone deep enough. And what do I mean by that? I keep saying that. What do I mean by that? Well, I knew a studio I used to went to. There was a lady and she was very smart and learned Sanskrit. And she tried to get these yoga philosophy classes started. But no one ever came because she was generally an unlikable person. I mean, I could handle her. So I used to do a lot of martial arts and stuff. And so I've dealt with kind of strict instructors, people who cold shoulder you or talk shit to you. Like, that's okay. I can handle that. I've played sports in high school and growing up and did competitive martial arts. Okay. So she would do that to me and it would make me, but it did feel off in the yoga studio. Like she would harshly critique you during your yoga practice and like had a reputation around town for being that way. And it's because she didn't go deep enough, even though she did do some meditation and some pranayama. From what I could tell, she was somewhat skeptical about a lot of those things and didn't really put in the effort required to get there. So she never really launched to a level where people wanted to be around her to learn pranayama or meditation. But my teacher, Simon Borg Olivier, is an awesome guy. Like, he's so fun to be around. The dude's playful, and like once the yoga class is done and you're hanging out, like he'll be doing something goofy, and like he's genuinely a pretty cool guy. And so when he talks about pranayama and meditation, I listen. I want to learn. I want to hear his interpretations on yoga philosophy, because he also went deep enough to realize that yoga education is the biggest thing. And so you might have to work on speaking skills, your personality. You might have to not be so unlikable if you want to, make yoga philosophy a big deal. And you're also going to have to sacrifice money. None of these yoga if yoga studios offered a free pranayama class that lasted 20 minutes after the most popular class of the day, or a meditation class, people would probably come. And, think of an instructor you really like one of those instructors that just has that it factor in an asana class. Like, damn, I love them. We've all had those people before. Imagine after class, they said, hey, you guys want to stay for an extra 20 minutes? If you guys want to leave, that's okay. But I want to show you guys some meditation and some pranayama stuff. Would you guys stay? Probably. Could you charge money for that class? No, you're not going to get anybody new in there for that class. But you're going to eventually grow that one by one, and it's going to become a big deal. And then you could start charging. Suddenly you have a pranayama or a meditation group, and you have people growing and progressing. But the problem is with pranayama and meditation is that it can't be equated in a similar way to asana, because you can walk into an asana class, a vinyasa flow class, and do modifications and these types of things. But the teacher continues. Modify this, get a block, do this. The class continues. But for pranayama and meditation, it's variable and very dangerous, because you may be able to breathe 60 seconds in and 60 seconds out, but you shouldn't do it if it's really hard, because you can blow your brain out. So it's actually a very subtle and personal thing, and requires actually a lot of coaching and personality selection. Like, I wouldn't want certain people I know to get into pranayama until maybe they did a little bit of mindful meditation or self-analysis and were coached and said, like, okay, don't push. The pranayama shouldn't feel hard at all. If you're pushing hard in pranayama, you're literally blowing your brains out. Do you want to be one of those yogis? Yeah, what's up, guys? There's a lot of guys and females in their 50s, 60s, and 70s who literally are dumb. I mean, I'll just say it. They've blown their brains out with yoga, especially pranayama, meditation. I'm sure they were doing drugs too, but they are on the way to mental handicap level, like the way they act and the way they come across. And I'm sure they weren't always like that. I've witnessed this myself. I won't say who, but I listened to someone get interviewed in the 1980s and read some of their work. They were a big figure in the yoga community, and I took a weekend workshop with them. They're super big in the community, and I talked with them a little bit. And it could just be that they're getting old, but it's like it was way beyond just getting old. This guy was so blissed out and couldn't comprehend what was going on. It was insane. And I've seen this time and time again with older yogis. And so it's kind of a hard thing. Like I said, you can't charge. You can't do it all at once. Okay, we're all going to do a 60-second inhale. No, you have to, so it takes a certain personality and leadership abilities that most of the time aren't present, because a lot of yogis are just, once again, focused on shedding their ego and working on their immortality projects. And so yogis are obsessed with asana because it's the easiest way to feel like you are getting a result without actually doing anything. I have known countless people who've done the work and they are so much better off, and thousands who haven't done the work. I want you to do the work. Continue your asana practice. But if you do 60 minutes of asana and that's all you have time for, cut off 20 minutes and do 10 minutes of pranayama and 10 minutes of meditation. You have to add it in, for the love of God. If you don't, I'm upset at you, and you're wasting your time and wasting your potential to help others. So thank you guys for being here. The link to my Instagram and my other YouTube channel, if you're interested in literature and writing, is down below. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.